Stomach pain, that's all? Aren't you overreacting a bit? But it could be appendicitis. As I endured the severe pain and managed to convey this, John snorted through his nose, laughing and dismissing my words, saying it couldn't be true. I'm about to go on a trip with my sister, go to the hospital yourself. In my fading consciousness, I desperately tried to call out to my husband as he left. Wait! But he closed the front door without listening to my pleading voice or Helen's crying. As I curled up in pain, Helen ran to me, crying. Mom, are you gonna die? Don't die. I hugged her small sobbing body, trying to reassure her. I don't remember much after that, but I woke up in the hospital, had some paperwork done, and managed to undergo surgery, staying until the next day. The diagnosis was indeed appendicitis. 3 days later, I was discharged and slowly returning to my usual life. While having dinner with Helen, I received a call from John. He started the conversation with, "Help me!" Turns out, he had an accident on the trip, and the car was no longer usable, needing a pickup. Who is this? I decided to pretend to be a stranger and hung up. The next afternoon, John and Samantha returned home. They burst through the front door, stomping loudly. And why didn't you come to pick us up? We had to catch a taxi, and it cost extra for both taxi and train fares. Their angry shouts and footsteps were loud until they reached the living room, where they were greeted by an unexpected scene. Welcome back. You must have had a tough time, I said coldly, glaring at them. In the room, besides Helen and me, were Robert, my parents, and my in-laws, all 14 eyes glaring at John and Samantha in anger. My name isn't Taylor. I live with my husband John and our daughter Helen. I met John on a dating app when I was still working in accounting at a trading company. After dating for about 2.5 years, he proposed to me. I will make you happy, Anne. John was tall, sociable, cheerful, and popular at work. As for me, I'm introverted, soft-spoken, and can't say no to requests. It seemed like John was too good for someone like me. Yet, he couldn't seem to maintain a relationship with a woman. When I asked him why, he just shrugged, as puzzled as I was. Well, maybe it's just a matter of compatibility, he would say with a light laugh, but after our marriage, I discovered that he was incredibly attached to his older sister, Samantha, a classic case of a brother complex. John had been taken care of by Samantha since they were kids, as their parents both worked. He had a habit of prioritizing her requests and words above everything else. This was occasional during our dating period, but I had hoped it would change after we got married and he settled into our family. However, my expectation was wrong. Samantha's involvement didn't cease even after our marriage. One weekend, while we were at a cafe, John's phone rang. Hey, your phone's ringing. Oh, it's my sister. When I told him, he happily answered Samantha's call. After a few nods, he abruptly stood up. Sorry, I gotta go help my sister with some shopping, you go on ahead. But today was our day off, we were going to see a movie. We can always watch it some other time. With that, he rushed off in the opposite direction of the movie theater. Even when I told John that as newlyweds, we should value our time together more, he merely dismissed it lightly. I had also spoken to my in-laws about their relationship, hoping they would be considerate, but it had no effect. Samantha, unmarried and living with parents, often turned to John for company, as her friends were married and less available. Whether it was John's inability to detach from his sister or vice versa, or both, I decided to refrain from intervening for a while. After our daughter, Helen, was born the following year, I became busy with household chores and childcare. John took paternity leave and helped with Helen and the housework, but still prioritized Samantha's requests. Samantha's insensitivity was evident even after Helen's birth. She would visit unannounced, staying until John returned, disturbing Helen's naps, and asking for food, which she'd eat and then chat with John until dinner. And, thank you for the meal. I always feel bad, she'd say, patting her stomach contentedly. But I couldn't understand why I had to satisfy Samantha's hunger at our family's expense. It would have been slightly more tolerable if she helped with the dishes, but she only demanded desserts after eating. Such surprise visits continued even as Helen grew. I've asked her to call in advance or give some notice a few days before visiting, as it's inconvenient when she comes unannounced. However, she has never once given prior notice. "Samantha, I've told you many times, we need some notice for grocery shopping." "Oh, did I? Sorry, forgot." She'd laugh off, unapologetically, just like John. And there were other incidents like these. When Helen was about to turn 3, we planned a family trip to go apple picking. On the eve of our trip, I received a call from Samantha. She had gotten tickets to a comedy show for the next day and invited us to join. John, far from declining, was excited to go. "What about apple picking?" "We've been planning this for a month." "Yeah, but it's sad for my sister to go to the show alone, isn't it? It'd be a waste to let the ticket go unused. But Helen has been looking forward to going with you. Please come with us." "Well, then we'll just have to change the date." I couldn't understand why it had to be this way and felt overwhelmed. "I know Samantha is important to you, but can't you prioritize Helen and me, your family?" John became indignant. "What are you talking about? It's only natural to care for my only sibling. You're second, Helen is third." In the end, we didn't go apple picking. Instead, Helen and I saw John off to the comedy show and just took a walk in the nearby park. Watching Helen happily play among the autumn leaves, I felt a pang of sadness. On a day when the sky seemed higher and the mornings and evenings grew colder. That day was John's day off, and the three of us, including Helen, were spending family time together. As usual, after finishing my chores, I felt a sharp pain in my right side. I had felt a bit off since the morning but thought it would pass. I had a terrible suspicion that it might be appendicitis. As the thought crossed my mind, the pain worsened rapidly, becoming so intense that I couldn't stand up and ended up doubling over in agony right where I was. "John, help me!" When I called for my husband, he appeared, already dressed up as if he was about to go somewhere. Following behind, Helen toddled over with her small steps. "Mommy? What's wrong?" John asked me in a half-hearted tone, as if just asking to be polite. "My stomach hurts. I can't move. Can you take me to the hospital?" I managed to answer through the severe pain. Hearing my plea, Helen started crying, calling out, "Mommy, Mommy. You're making too much of a stomach ache. But it might be appendicitis." He snorted through his nose, dismissing my concern. "I've got a trip planned with my sister, you can go to the hospital yourself." He turned and went back to his room, then came out with a small suitcase and briskly headed for the front door. In my dazed state, I desperately tried to stop him. "Wait. My stomach really hurts." Ignoring my pleading voice and Helen's cries, John closed the front door and left. As I curled up in pain, Helen came running to me, crying, "Mommy, are you going to die? Please don't die." I tried to reassure her by hugging her small sobbing body, but I could barely muster any strength. Who else could I rely on? Then I remembered my brother. He is Robert Smith. We hadn't been in touch much since I got married, but he should still be living near my house. He might be out, but I had no one else to turn to. I had Helen fetch my smartphone, and with trembling fingers, I called Robert. The phone rang, and the seemingly endless call tone echoed through the speaker. I waited, praying for a response. Suddenly, the ringing stopped, and I heard a voice say, "Hello? Anne? It's been a while, what's up?" His casual voice was a relief. "Brother, my stomach hurts. I can't move. Please take me to the hospital." "What? Are you okay? I'm coming right now." Robert sensed the urgency in my voice and responded tensely. Robert didn't hang up the phone, instead reassuring me with words like, "Don't worry, and is Helen there? Is she okay?" During this time, I could hear the sounds of him locking his house and starting his car engine, clearly hurrying to come over. Robert has always been the caring type since I was little. Whether I got lost or failed my first choice in high school admissions, he always encouraged me, saying, "Don't worry, it'll be okay." He's my reliable and proud brother. Now, he was chatting with Helen, keeping her from getting anxious, which made me feel much stronger. Soon, I heard the sound of a car pulling up outside, and Robert's voice came through the phone, "I'm here." Coming in. Helen, with unsteady steps, went to the front door to greet him and told him where I was. Robert, dressed in a t-shirt and chinos, looking quite casual, rushed in. This was his usual outfit when he's off work and just popping out to the convenience store for lunch. "Hang in there, Anne. It's okay now, your brother's here." "Come on, Helen, let's go, you're worried about Mom, right?" He carried me to his car parked outside, seated both me and Helen in it, and drove us quickly to the hospital. I don't remember much after that, but when I came to, I was in the hospital, having completed some paperwork and somehow finished the surgery. The diagnosis was indeed appendicitis, and I had to stay until the next day. With John gone on his trip, I had no choice but to call my parents for help with Helen's care and explain the situation. They were furious on the other end of the phone but only said, "We'll take care of Helen, just focus on your treatment," before hanging up. When I briefly explained to Robert, he was equally furious. "Wait, John left you two to go on a trip?" "Why?" "He went because Samantha asked him to." "Please, take Helen to Mom and Dad's place." Helen, exhausted from crying, was already fast asleep in the chair next to me. "Sure, I'll take care of Helen. You just get some rest." Luckily, Robert would take Helen to our parents' house. As for her clothes and other necessities, we always kept an overnight bag ready at their place, just in case, so there was nothing to worry about. After Robert and Helen left the hospital room, I finally had a moment to breathe. 3 days passed, and I was discharged from the hospital, gradually getting back to my normal life. My recovery was going well, and today, I could comfortably enjoy a meal with Helen. We were having omelets for dinner. Helen was still struggling to use the spoon properly, but was eating without complaint. Then, my smartphone rang. I checked the screen, curious to see who it was, and saw it was John. For a moment, I considered ignoring the call due to its persistent ringing, but I eventually decided to answer it. "Help me!" John cried out as soon as I answered, explaining through tears that he had an accident on his trip, the car was no longer usable, and he needed a pickup. "My car's busted, and I'm stuck here with Samantha. And you can drive, right? Come pick us up." Listening to their childish wailing over the phone, I sighed and responded. Who is this? What are you talking about?" "It's me, don't you recognize my voice?" John's angry response, reminiscent of some scam call, seemed almost comical to me. "Sorry, I can't hear you clearly. I'm going to hang up now." I decided to pretend to be a stranger and, ignoring their cries of "wait a minute," I ended the call. "Who was that?" "Oh, just a wrong number." I quietly set my smartphone to block John's calls and continued dinner with Helen. The next day, in the afternoon, John and Samantha returned home. They burst through the front door, stomping loudly. "And why didn't you come to pick us up? We had to catch a taxi, and it cost extra for both the taxi and train fares." Their angry shouts and footsteps were loud until they reached the living room, where they were greeted by an unexpected scene. "Welcome back. You must have had a tough time," I said coldly, glaring at them. Besides Helen and me, there were Robert, my parents, and John's parents, all 14 eyes glaring angrily at John and Samantha. "Why is everyone here?" John stood there, dumbfounded by the situation, so I explained it to him. "You do realize what you've done, right? You left me and Helen to go on a trip. After that, I had to be hospitalized. I've told everything to both my parents and yours," I said in one breath, blaming John. John looked baffled, almost as if he wanted to say, "So what's the big deal? But in the end, you were okay, right? You have no idea how worried and helpless Helen and I felt. Samantha, you could have been more considerate. You're always dragging John around for your errands. What? Why am I being scolded? I didn't know about your situation. Both John and Samantha remained adamant that they weren't at fault, instead starting to complain about why I hadn't come to pick them up the day before. I was so angry with both of them that I wanted to slap them right there, but I restrained myself, clenching my fists instead. I couldn't forgive John for choosing to go on a trip with his real sister over his suffering wife and anxious, crying daughter. That's why I had called both our parents and in-laws here for a discussion, but instead of talking it out, John and Samantha faced a barrage of criticism from both families. Helen, scared by the commotion, started crying and clung to my mother. Despite this, my father angrily said, "We trusted you with our daughter, what were you thinking?" And John's mother exclaimed, "You two have gone too far." The pair, usually so assertive, finally looked taken aback, realizing they were completely surrounded by disapproval. John's father sternly ordered, "Kneel down and apologize to and both of you," leading to John and Samantha reluctantly kneeling down. "We're sorry, we won't do it again." "I apologize." Receiving such an insincere apology at this point only intensified my anger, leaving me standing there seething with frustration. I was foolish to have expected even a bit of sincerity from them. Controlling my irritation, I presented them with divorce papers. "We're getting a divorce. I've thought it over these last 3 days, and I can't be with you anymore." John's eyes widened. "Divorce is an overreaction," he protested. "You won't be able to live on your own at your age. I don't need a father who doesn't prioritize his family. I'll protect and raise Helen no matter what, so don't worry." I spoke coldly, and John seemed at a loss. John was understandably taken aback, as I had never before rebutted or stood up so strongly against him. This was a side of me he had never seen before. Despite this, he continued to resist and started making various excuses. "If we get divorced, how will people at work see me? Are you trying to ruin my reputation?" "I don't care what happens to your reputation. We're getting divorced." "And what about this house? I'm the one who took out the mortgage. Are you okay with losing your home?" "I've already thought about all that during these 3 days. I've discussed it with my parents, and Helen and I will return to my parents' house." "Wait, what about Helen? Have you asked her what she wants?" John's face lit up as if he had come up with a brilliant idea, but his desperate attempt to bring our daughter into the argument only served to irritate me further. "Why don't you ask her yourself?" John, now visibly shaken, turned to Helen for support. "Helen, you don't want to live without Daddy, do you?" Helen, who had been with my mother until then, shook her head and said through tears when John addressed her, "Daddy's not fun to be with. He never plays with me, always goes out with Auntie. I don't need him. I just need Mommy." Hearing Helen say she didn't need him was undoubtedly a shock to John. John's parents, overhearing this, were even more outraged. "How can a father let his young child feel this way? What kind of person are you?" they exclaimed. John's mother snatched the divorce papers from my hand and slammed them down in front of him, sternly demanding that he agree to the divorce. His face turned red, as if sprouting horns in anger, and he visibly trembled. John signed the divorce papers and then broke down in tears, but no one offered him any sympathy. I wondered if he would have paid more attention to his family had he known it would come to this. But I doubted it. Even if he had known, his actions probably wouldn't have changed. Later, I filed the divorce papers at the city hall, and it was successfully processed. I was free. My in-laws apologized again and agreed to pay more than the usual amount in child support. John ended up selling the house and moving back with his parents, commuting to work from there. John, having his commuting route changed, was teased by his colleagues. He inadvertently mentioned that he was commuting from his parents' home because of his divorce. This quickly became the talk of his department, and for a while, he faced a mix of sympathetic and pitying looks from his coworkers. My cousin, who lived near my in-laws and was known as the speaker in our family. She is known to spread news quickly, therefore, it didn't take long for the entire neighborhood to know about our divorce and the reasons behind it. Within days, everyone in the neighborhood knew about it, proving that her knack for communication was not to be underestimated. As a result, John and Samantha faced scornful glances even for simple trips to the convenience store. As a result of this widespread gossip, the relationship between John and his sister became strained. "Why are you blaming me? If you hadn't gotten divorced, none of this would have happened. It's your fault. If you hadn't interfered with my family, this wouldn't have happened. Show some restraint. You always said you cared more about me than your family every time I asked you out." It seems that my cousin overheard these kinds of exchanges between John and his sister. Helen and I left the house we had lived in and moved back with my parents. My mother took care of me, looking after Helen while I was busy running errands and handling various procedures for a few days. My father, too, was very fond of her, often taking her out in his car to the library to borrow books or to train crossings to watch the trains, making her days enjoyable and fulfilling. Robert also moved closer to our parents' house. When I asked Robert what brought about the sudden move, he explained that his office had relocated, changing his nearest train station, so he moved closer to our family home. It's a coincidence, but I rented an apartment near our parents' house. Helen can come over to play anytime. I've got snacks and juice ready. Candy! Helen's eyes sparkled at the mention of sweets, and she joyfully bounced around, humming apple pie for me. "I'm glad you're excited, Robert, but don't give her too much sugar, okay?" He laughed and replied, I know. With the support of my family, I was able to start job hunting. Despite the gap in my resume due to childbirth and childcare, I found a job at a small office that seemed willing to hire someone for accounting work. The company, under the president's direction, aimed to create a workplace supportive of parenting. Most employees were mothers, and there was a manual to accommodate sudden early departures or pickups of children in the evening. My parents were impressed and happy with this arrangement. Helen started attending kindergarten and began learning various games and words. "This is a maple leaf, and this yellow one is a ginkgo. They're beautiful, aren't they?" I said, showing her the red and yellow paper leaves she had made at kindergarten, somewhat clumsily shaped but recognizable. It became clear that she liked beautiful leaves and was becoming skillful with her hands, using scissors more frequently. I remembered how we missed going leaf peeping once and decided to find a nearby spot for it. I discussed it with my parents and Helen, and we planned to go during the next long weekend. I also invited Robert, and he agreed to come. "I'll bring lots of snacks. Remember, Helen's snack budget is $10. I reminded him, causing everyone, including my parents and Helen, to burst into laughter. It seemed like Robert didn't quite understand a parent's wish for their child to eat properly, not just snacks, even in the season of hearty appetites. Nevertheless, his affection for Helen was heartwarming. Helen and I continued to live happily with support from our loving family. I've decided to have Mom come live with us here. My husband's sudden cohabitation announcement nearly made me drop my cup. "What? You can't just spring something like that on me. It's impossible here." Mom's been suddenly left alone and is very sad. So I was thinking she could stay with us for a while. She'll move in next week. I was of course worried about my mother-in-law who had suddenly lost her husband in a car accident. But why on earth would he decide on living together without consulting me? I was angry about the sudden news, but I tried to convince myself that it would be okay for just a short while. However, to my astonishment, the following week my mother-in-law arrived with a moving company in tow. Oh. What's all this stuff? What's going on here? I sold my house because it's definitely more comfortable here. I thought, if I'm gonna move, I might as well. What? When I looked at my husband, he was grinning mischievously at me. Didn't I tell you I was going to invite Mom to live with us? This is my house. You need to obey the orders of the head of the household. Make sure you take good care of Mom. What? Head of the household. What are you talking about? This is the place I'm renting from my cousin Lisa, remember? Had my husband forgotten something that important? I know that. But right now, I'm the one paying the steep rent here. If you can't obey me, then get out of this house. Huh? Although $2,500 is just half of the rent. I wanted to argue, but I decided it was better to let them face reality squarely, so I held back what I wanted to say. I packed my belongings into a suitcase and silently decided to leave the house. This is no good. After leaving the apartment, I sighed heavily and made a phone call. I'm Sarah Johnson, 35 years old. I opened a facial spa and it's been 7 years now. I went to vocational school to become a beautician, but during my studies, my career aspirations shifted. Believing that true beauty starts with healthy skin, I decided to start my own business after years of training at a salon. My husband Kyle and I have been married for 3 years and have been living together. Kyle was a high school classmate, and we reconnected at our 10-year reunion. While chatting excitedly with friends about our obsession with natural stone bracelets at the time, Kyle cut in. Eh? If you want to boost your love luck, maybe rose quartz would be better? Eh? Why? And how do you know that? Oh, I got interested in gemstones a while back. You know, we're getting to that age where marriage and serious relationships come to mind, and I just thought rose quartz seemed promising for that. Kyle, with his hair still tousled from sleep as usual, piqued my interest with his casual remark. He was always known as bedhead among the girls at school due to his odd hair. And I knew he was indifferent to his looks or rumors, but I never imagined he was so knowledgeable. Later, at the after-party, I found out he was also into my favorite anime and he shared lots of rare insights. From there, I, taken with Kyle, started reaching out and eventually, it led to us dating. Today marks our 2nd anniversary of dating. I want to be with you next year too, so how about we get married? Eh? Is this a proposal? Yeah, what else would it be? I just didn't expect you to say it so casually. Kyle was an odd guy, but he was a fun and comfortable presence for me, and I saw no reason to refuse. 2 years into our marriage, an opportunity, or rather, a golden chance, came my way. It was an incredible offer from my beloved older cousin Lisa. Lisa, who was 10 years my senior, had always doted on me since I was a child. Since we were both only children, we were still very close, like sisters. Her proposal was indeed marvelous, but it might have been too stimulating for us as a couple, or perhaps just for Kyle. I never expected that it would lead to such a conclusion. Starting next month, my husband's job is taking us abroad for 2 years. Sarah, why don't you live in our condo while we're gone? No way. I can't afford the rent for a place like that. Lisa's husband, John, has been successful with his business since he was young, and honestly, he's way richer than I could ever imagine. Lisa herself became an independent management consultant a few years ago and has been steadily increasing her profits. Sarah, you mentioned before that you can't seem to make more than $5,000 a month, right? Why don't you try living like a celeb for once? If you start taking that kind of environment for granted, you might just solve all your current problems in one go. I see, so you're saying to change my perspective on money. That's right. Our rent is $30,000, but if you're gonna live there, I'll let you have it for $6,000. How about it? My head spun. Even my current rent of $1,800 feels steep. But honestly, I really like our current place and don't want to let it go. But John says he's okay with renting it out to you as an investment. The owner of Lisa's condo is a friend of John's. Mr. Otomo is someone who supports entrepreneurs, so when Lisa brought up my story, he agreed right away. I get that it's a good offer, but can I discuss it with Kyle before I decide? Of course. I'll be looking forward to your response. At this point, I'd been running my salon for 5 years, but no matter how hard I tried, there's a limit to what I can do alone. I had almost given up on the idea that my monthly income would ever exceed $10,000. That's why the mere thought of the amount was already pressuring me. When I trudged home, my husband was into his new workout routine. I cautiously brought up Lisa's offer. Why not? It'd be a bigger space, and super close to work. Kyle, less concerned with overtime, worked as an in-house designer for a corporation. He's the type who wants to spend his time only on what he likes. Commuting from Lisa's condo would cut down the travel time significantly. But it'll be a bigger financial load than before, you know? It's for your growth, isn't it? I'm fine either way, so just work it out with Lisa. Even after marriage, my husband has been indifferent to anything outside his interests. Probably, except for the shorter commute, he isn't really interested in the details. Even as I explained the terms of living there and the rent, he just nodded, and I wondered if he was actually listening. After much thought, I decided to take on the challenge and moved in, agreeing to pay half the rent, $15,000, while my husband would cover the other half, and I'd handle all our living expenses. I was determined to gamble these 2 years on my life. Wow, this is amazing. That's incredible. That was our first reaction when we stepped into the high-end rental property. I thought we could actually live in the side closet for shoes, and the living room, which was over 430 square feet, seemed perfect for throwing a grand party. The standout feature was a white leather sofa in the vast space. We're told to use the furniture and appliances as they are, but they're all kinds I'd never afford in my life. It hardly felt like home. We had never even stayed in a hotel suite, so the place felt incredibly lavish, almost uncomfortably so. Now I understand what Lisa was talking about. If we get used to this environment, our perspective might really change. Yeah, indeed. And so, our life in a luxury condo began. Familiarity can be a frightening thing. Within 3 months, the place we used to tense up and started feeling like a sanctuary. It even changed my approach to work. Since we moved here for a reason, I started thinking about what we could do to take advantage of the location. I'm thinking of taking the plunge and hiring someone for my salon. I'm considering doing workshops or something with the extra time. That's what people have been requesting, right? If you want to do it, Sarah, you should give it a shot. I run a beauty-related social media account personally, and I had requests for a while to host workshops or tea parties where people could talk to me directly. Since then, it's been a trial and error process, learning and practicing every day. It was exhausting, but the results were well received, and before I knew it, I was easily making over $10,000 a month. I changed, but the environment also had a big impact on my husband, Kyle. In what way, you ask? His appearance changed. He probably thought it would be problematic for the neighbors if he continued to neglect his appearance. He's making sure his hair is neat and he's dressing sharper when he goes out. Although, as a result of getting ready to go out, the house ends up a mess. You know, I started getting approached by people at work who I've never talked to before. I bet. Even I think you look the best you ever have. The first year after we moved, our life was really going well. The dark cloud loomed when my mother-in-law, who found out about our new place through the New Year's cards, came to visit. She has a hobby of taking classes and has a lavish, vain personality. I was surprised when I saw the address. What an amazing house! I never imagined Kyle would move into a place like this. I'm so proud. My mother-in-law was as surprised as we were. Oh, this house is... right? I can step up when I need to, Kyle said, cutting me off, grinning as if he had rented the place himself. And then gesturing for me to be quiet with a finger to his lips. The class I attend is close by. It's easy to stop by on my way home, so I'll be dropping in from time to time. Sure, just make sure to let us know before you come over. I know that. I had a bad feeling about this. After retiring, my father-in-law enjoyed fishing with his buddies, often going on trips. Because of this, my mother-in-law started to come over to stay more often when my father-in-law was out. What bothered me was her sleeping on our white living room sofa. No matter how many times I told her, even laying out a futon on the floor, I'd find her sleeping on the sofa. Mother-in-law, please don't sleep on the white sofa, this is a rented place. Oh, sorry about that. It's just so comfy that I end up sleeping here without realizing. Initially, my mother-in-law was well behaved like a guest, but gradually she started acting as if it was her own house. She was careless with the furniture and appliances, and I was constantly worried she might damage something. Hey, don't you think you're coming over too often, mother-in-law? This isn't our house, you should hold back a little. What? Let me enjoy it, too. This kind of lifestyle doesn't come around often. Plus, you've been asking me to clean the house every time I come. It's been handy for you, right? Kyle hadn't corrected the lie he told my mother-in-law. Since he started dressing properly, he's become really sloppy at home. Having my mother-in-law around to easily ask to tidy up must have been convenient for him. But the cleaning she was supposedly doing only happened at the beginning. Sarah, the house is a mess. Don't just sit there, vacuum the floor. The bathroom is soaking wet. When I got home from work, my mother-in-law was there more often, scolding me. Kyle was influenced by his mother and started blaming me, increasing my stress after coming home. Yet, since my father-in-law was often away from their house, I felt somewhat relieved that the situation couldn't get much worse. But as my mother-in-law's visits increased, another source of stress piled up for me. My husband has been coming home late. There are nights he comes back drunk in the middle of the night, or sometimes he doesn't come home until the morning. Occasionally, the smell of perfume lingers on him. When confronted, he says he's hooked on trying out new bars lately. Cut it out already. It's fine to go out for drinks, but coming home in the morning isn't normal. And how much are you spending on drinking anyway? I'm giving you enough for expenses, aren't I? How I use my money is my business. Just leave it be. I was shocked because he never used to talk like this. But there was something else I had to say. You've been wearing John's suits from the closet, haven't you? Do you think that's okay? What? You use Lisa's clothes and bags without asking, right? I was dumbfounded. Does he think it's okay to just use anything in the house as he pleases? I always get permission and take them to the cleaners afterward. Have you got permission from John? Well, you handle that part, make it sound good. John's suits are really cool. They fit me perfectly since we're about the same height, and I get a lot of compliments. I was furious. Of course, the suits of our landlord, who could afford such a nice house, would be stylish. If he ruined them, there's no way he could afford to replace them. Stop it. Stop it right now. Take care of what you've used and don't ever wear them again. Would you quit nagging? Seriously, you're so annoying. I'm in my prime for attracting attention. If you keep this up, I'm out of here. Divorce, I mean it. I felt as if a century-long love had gone cold. The man in front of me was no longer the husband I knew. But then, an unexpected event happened. My father-in-law had an accident while out fishing and passed away. Caught up with funeral arrangements, I had forgotten about these problems, but after the 49-day mourning period settled, my husband dropped a bombshell. I've decided to have Mom move in with us. I almost dropped my cup when my husband suddenly declared they would live with us. What? You can't just spring that on me, it's not possible here. Mom's really sad being all alone suddenly. So, I thought we'd live together for a while. But how can he decide that on his own? She'll move in next week. Next week? Why didn't you discuss this with me sooner? Sorry. But I thought you'd understand, Sarah. Gosh. I was upset by the sudden news, but if it's just for a short while, maybe it's bearable. I was worried about my mother-in-law who had just lost her husband. But the way my husband had decided on their living together without consulting me, I felt betrayed. The following week, to my surprise, my mother-in-law arrived with movers. What's all this about? This place is much more comfortable than my old house. I thought, why not, and sold the house to move here. What? Looking at my husband, he was grinning at me. I told you we were gonna have Mom move in, right? But I said it wasn't possible here. And you said it was only for a while. This house is big enough, one more person won't hurt. He had planned to live with his mother here all along. I didn't know what he had told his mother, but selling her own house to move in. I had a headache, and then my husband said something even more absurd. This is my house. You'll follow the head of the household's orders and take care of Mom. What? Head of the household? What are you talking about? This house is borrowed from Lisa, remember? Had he forgotten such an important detail? I know. But right now, who's paying the steep rent? Me, right? What? My husband has always been indifferent to money and possessions. But I never imagined he'd be so careless to barely remember details about this house. When he was single, Kyle lived in a cheap apartment that cost just $500 a month. So, I can understand why he'd think $3,000 a month for rent seems outrageously expensive. But did he seriously believe someone would rent us this property for such a price? If you can't listen to your husband, then pack up and leave. You've become so annoying with all your nagging lately. That's right. Thanks to Kyle, we're living this good life, and here you are complaining like an ungrateful spouse. I felt like I finally understood my husband's scheme. Ever since we moved into this house and started getting attention from everyone around us, he probably found my reminders about his spending habits and coming home late annoying. He's trying to kick me out without even realizing his massive misunderstanding. Fine, I'll leave. But are you sure that's what you want? Yeah, I'm done with you. I'm gonna live here with Mom. With Dad's inheritance and the money from selling the family home, we'll be just fine. I'll send the divorce papers to the salon later. So that's why he called his mother. I could have argued here, but I decided to let them face reality on their own, biting back my retort. I packed my things into a suitcase and silently left the house. This is a mess. Once outside the apartment, I sighed deeply and called Lisa overseas. What? No way I'm gonna let him treat my cousin like that. Just wait a month. Once I'm ready, I'll come back home. Lisa was furious with Kyle's actions and decided to return home half a year earlier than planned. About a month later, I received a call from Kyle. I had received the divorce papers right after leaving, but I knew this call wasn't about that. I thought about ignoring it, but the phone kept ringing. Reluctantly, I answered and heard, "Sarah?" Finally. The management company says the rent hasn't been paid. I've been making the payments as usual. Please, can you check with Lisa what's going on? Did you check the bank account? Yeah, it's got $3,000 in it. I almost burst out laughing. I hadn't made any deposits into that account, and I had withdrawn the balance after leaving the apartment. With just $3,000, you won't even cover the utility bills, let alone rent. How embarrassing it must be to live in a luxury apartment and have your electricity cut off. Why didn't you leave enough money in there? Huh? Why should I pay the utilities for a place I don't even live in anymore? He went silent, probably realizing the absurdity of his request. You have the day off tomorrow, right? I'll come over so we can talk. Yeah, sure. I'd appreciate it. He sounded deflated, even through the phone. That's what he gets for overstepping. I'll make sure he cleans up his own mess. The next day, I went to the apartment with Lisa, who had just returned from abroad. I could have used my key, but I rang the doorbell out of courtesy. It was my mother-in-law who answered. Yes, who is it? Sarah? Why are you back? Didn't you get a divorce? Yes, I did. I'm here to have you vacate the apartment. What? She was shocked, and Kyle showed his face behind her, looking guilty. He hadn't told her about the current situation yet. But the moment he saw Lisa standing behind me, his eyes widened. Lisa, you? Why are you here? I got a call from Sarah and had to come back to the States on short notice. Oh, this is Mr. Thompson, the owner and manager of this apartment. When we told him we were going to have a discussion, Mr. Thompson said he would sit in with us. As we entered the living room, I was shocked by what I saw, even though only a month had passed. The once lovely space looked like it had turned into a storage room. Boxes of my mother-in-law's moving items were piled up at the end of the living room, still unpacked. Lisa let out a small sigh beside me. When we all took a seat on the couch, Mr. Thompson was the first to speak up. "So, about the rent for this month, when can I expect the payment?" Well, I had deposited the usual $3,000 into the account, but it seems like it hasn't been withdrawn. My husband's face was pitiful as he spoke in a sweaty, murmuring voice. He had bed hair just like in the old days today. "Did you seriously think it was $3,000? Didn't I ask you to pay just half of the rent at first? Remember?" "What? No way, half, you mean it's actually $6,000? I seem to recall something about half." Kyle's face looked shocked before he began to scratch his head frantically. I couldn't help but be a little impressed at his lack of memory regarding things he wasn't interested in. "That's right, $6,000. But actually, the rent here is $30,000. What? What kind of figure is that?" Maybe I only heard about the amount we were supposed to pay. He meant the amount he was supposed to pay, of course. Beside my husband, my mother-in-law also had her eyes wide open. "What? What do you mean $30,000? This is the apartment Kyle was borrowing from an acquaintance, right?" "No. This apartment belongs to Lisa, whom I rent from. We had a 2-year lease but decided to terminate it 6 months early due to this situation." My mother-in-law's face turned pale as she kept hitting Kyle's knee. "What are we gonna do? I sold my house thinking Kyle was earning well. And I've been shopping a lot too. What are we gonna do?" She started trembling with her hands covering her mouth. But she quickly turned back to Lisa and pleaded, "Lisa, can Kyle and I sign a lease for $3,000? Just for half a year, I can't give up living here so suddenly." Lisa's mouth turned into a frown at my mother-in-law's brazen request. "Look, Sarah, help me out here. You know what, you're welcome to move back in too." I felt my own mouth turning into a frown, just like Lisa's. I rented this place to support Sarah's hard work. I won't forgive anyone who tries to kick her out. Lisa turned her gaze to Kyle, who closed his eyes and looked down. But leaving this place was no longer just a simple matter. "And to think how carelessly you've treated things. This sofa, for instance, I can't even bring myself to use it anymore." Lisa frowned at the stains and dirt on the once pristine white leather sofa. "I was planning to have you purchase the heavily worn items after 2 years, so I'll be doing a check now." "What? Wait a minute. I wasn't informed about this." Kyle looked up, his voice sounding utterly ridiculous. "You'd normally restore a rental to its original state before returning it. It's only right to compensate if you've misused the furniture and appliances we let you use." I'd explained this before, but considering he didn't even remember the rent, such details were unlikely to have stuck in his mind. Lisa walked around the apartment, checking everything. From the kitchen, I heard many sighs, so it was likely that the appliances would be up for purchase. Opening the bedroom closet, Lisa sighed even deeper. "Kyle, did you wear John's suits without permission? I didn't agree to lend you personal items. And you've treated these quite roughly too. Sorry, but you'll definitely be buying these at the full price." Just as I thought. Despite being told not to wear them anymore. Every suit left in the closet was over $10,000. The only silver lining was that Kyle had only worn 3 suits. "Kyle, I'm so disappointed in you. I trusted you with this house because of you and Sarah. I have no sympathy for someone who's hurt my dear Sarah." Kyle's face was ashen, shaking violently. The amount Lisa suggested for the purchases was substantial. And as if to drive the point home, Mr. Thompson began to speak. "As for me, I'd like to ask you to pay this month's rent of $30,000, along with the cleaning fee for the room. The rent of $6,000 here is strictly under the contract with Sarah, not with you. And I need you to vacate the place as soon as possible.
But, it's impossible to just leave like that. Sarah, please ask her on my behalf too.
The mother-in-law, who had been downcast, raised her face and cried out loudly. Why should I? I've already submitted the divorce papers that Kyle sent, so we're strangers now. I have no obligation to help a stranger. Mr. Thompson looked at the mother-in-law with a pitying gaze, yet firmly presented the harsh reality. If you can't vacate immediately, I'll have to sue for illegal occupation.
Why do I have to go through this? I can't stand this anymore.
The mother-in-law screamed and stood up, then left the room. Kyle was stunned for a while as if his soul had left him, but then looked at me with a plea for help. Sarah. I'm sorry. I've finally woken up. I got carried away, thinking I was rich. I lost my mind. That's right. You seem to have come to your senses.
Sorry, it really was all my fault. Let's start over from scratch in a new place.
No matter what he said now, it no longer touched my heart. Our trust was broken, and I had also overheard that Kyle had been fooling around with other women. It's not gonna work. Like I said earlier, we're already divorced. Besides, even though I filed for divorce in anger, after a month, I have no regrets, and I've moved on completely. I looked back at my husband with a full smile. Seeing my face, he seemed to give up and asked in a quiet voice. You've been covering everything but half the rent, haven't you? By the way, how much are you earning now? I realized we hadn't talked about work in a long time. I've just started making over $16,000 a month. Looks like I might reach $20,000 by the end of the year.
No way. Why didn't you tell me? Please, give us another chance.
Kyle slid off the sofa and started crying, collapsing onto the floor. His hair still tousled from sleep. I wished he would remain that bed-headed boy no matter how much our standard of living had risen. Thinking this made me feel a bit sad, despite having thought I was over it. Soon after, perhaps scared by the mention of illegal occupation, they rented a monthly apartment and left. It seems they managed to pay off their debts with the inheritance from Kyle's father and by selling their family home, but their finances must be pretty tight now. Well, it's not that Kyle isn't earning badly, and if he lives within his means, he should be able to manage. After the divorce, Kyle contacted me just once to apologize. I have no intention of getting back together, but I genuinely wish him the best. He lamented then that it's hard to lower your standard of living once it's gone up, referring to living with his mother. Thinking about his mother, who enjoyed her hobbies and luxuries, I'm filled with worries about their future. I didn't ask for alimony from Kyle. Some may think it's too lenient, but I believe I was the one who changed the carefree man with the bed head. Being in that environment allowed me to adapt to a mindset that this lifestyle was the norm and helped me earn as much. Thanks to that, my endeavors are reaching new heights. But Kyle and his mother just used that environment to raise their standard of living, without realizing their delusion. Now, I live alone in a $3,600 rental. Though I'm not up to Lisa's level yet, I feel I've come a long way from the time when an $1,800 rent was a struggle. I believe in myself and want to continue making my dreams come true.
This car is now mine and my girlfriend's.
Despite getting caught cheating, Lucas talks confidently. I can't help but be thoroughly amazed by his attitude. Why is he so cheerful? Why does he act so superior towards me? I even wondered if he and I see the world completely differently. But if he's willing to take this car, I couldn't be happier. The monthly loan is $6,000, but he'll figure something out. All right then, I hope $6,000 for the loan will be okay. When I accepted Lucas' request and nodded, he started to look delighted with a smile I had never seen him wear. My name is Jessica Thompson. I'm 38 years old and work at a design firm. I don't really have any worries in my job or personal life and live each day happily. That's what I thought, but sometimes I'm struck by a certain thought. I occasionally wonder when I'll be able to get married. Here I am, almost 40, and not only am I not married, I don't even have a boyfriend. My experiences with romance are also few. Before I knew it, all my friends had tied the knot, and I felt like the odd one out, left behind on my own. There were times I thought maybe I should just give up on the idea of marriage, but seeing how happy my friends seemed made me dream of it, too. The day that turned my life around was just an ordinary evening after work. I was feeling good and decided to grab a drink by myself at a bar. I walked into one that caught my eye and ordered some drinks and appetizers. As I waited and was looking at my phone, I noticed a guy coming over to me.
Hey there, are you on your own?
The man who came up and peered into my face, this was the moment I met Lucas, who would later become my husband.
Yes, I'm by myself. Really? Then let's have a drink together. How about it?
Lucas didn't wait for my reply, he just sat down and started tilting his glass.
Hey. Come on, it'll be fun. Just for a little while.
I figured a little while couldn't hurt, so I let Lucas join me. But I really wasn't in the mood to talk to anyone that day. When I looked down, Lucas started talking on his own. Eventually, I got swept up in the conversation, and we exchanged numbers before parting ways. I thought that would be the end of our interaction, but 2 months after our first meeting, Lucas and I began seeing each other often. During our exchanges, I found myself gradually drawn to Lucas. Talking to him, my feelings would gradually become serene. I honestly wanted to talk more. When he said he wanted to see me, I felt genuinely happy. I never expected to develop such emotions, and I can't help but be surprised. 6 months after we first met, Lucas and I became a couple. 3 years of dating later, we got married. I never imagined I could get married, and when Lucas proposed, it felt like a dream. But I realized after it all ended that this was the pinnacle of happiness. After marriage, Lucas changed drastically. He became so different it made me wonder if his personality during our dating period was just a facade. It was probably about a month after we started living together. Suddenly, Lucas became distant. Whether he would be late coming home, or what he wanted for dinner. I tried to start various conversations, but all I got from Lucas were indifferent responses like, yeah, uh-huh.
Hey, what's been going on with you lately? You seem down. Just leave me alone. It's none of your business, okay?
I wonder if he's come to dislike me. Watching Lucas' attitude worsen day by day, my anxiety grew. Yet, I was still happy that he came home. He would still eat the dinner I made, and we still shared a bedroom. Somewhere in my mind, I believed he still had feelings for me. His current indifference and harsh demeanor could just be because he's tired. I had those feelings. However, a month into our misaligned lives, Lucas started coming home late more often, citing overtime and drinks out, and I found myself spending many nights alone at home. During the day, I'm not alone because of work, but coming home to an empty house is indescribably empty. Just me again tonight. Then a message from Lucas popped up. It was him saying he had to work late again tonight. I appreciate that he still sends messages, but I can't help but worry about the increase in overtime and nights out since we got married. Maybe I did something wrong. Could it be that he's disillusioned and deliberately not coming home? I received a message from Lucas and placed my shopping bags down gently. Before I knew it, Lucas had stopped coming home every day. The slightly pricier rental we got for our new life together. Since Lucas stopped coming home, it has become a place where I spend time alone in loneliness. We were supposed to be married, so why has it come to this? As I thought about Lucas, I continued to eat my dinner alone. When Lucas did occasionally come home, he was always in a bad mood.
You'll eat dinner, right? I'm going to make it now.
As usual, I prepared dinner and served it to Lucas. But after one bite of the side dish, he stopped eating.
What's wrong? Not hungry? I've been meaning to say this, but the food you make is really awful.
I was frozen by his words, something I had never heard before. Until now, he had always said my cooking was delicious and had seconds. There were even times on our anniversaries when he said he preferred my home cooking over going to a fancy restaurant or inn.
And yet, why suddenly?
I'm sorry. I didn't know it was bad. I'll take it away.
Don't touch me!
Lucas glared at me sharply and started eating again. But he never looked pleased with the taste, always frowning. He started to complain about the cleaning and laundry I did as well. If the coffee cups weren't aligned perfectly or if a picture on the wall was tilted. Even a single hair on the floor would result in a complaint. Considering I work too, a few oversights should be understandable. I even began to wonder if it's normal for someone to fuss over such small details. Of course, I've repeatedly mentioned that I can't manage housework perfectly because of my job. However, Lucas was utterly uncompromising. It always ended with him yelling, "You just need to be quiet and do what I say." The stress just kept building up every time I interacted with Lucas. I felt such self-loathing, wondering if I really should have married him. All these swirling emotions even led me to consider divorce. But the fact that I managed to get married at this age, and the hassle of divorce proceedings, made it hard to take any action. I thought I just had to endure. Eventually, I found myself resigned to this way of thinking. But before we got married, I made a big purchase. It was a luxury car from a well-known brand. Of course, I couldn't pay for it all at once, so I'm on a loan. I'm not particularly into cars, but there was one model I've always dreamed of. Now as an adult, owning it makes me happy and motivates me at work. It's thanks to that I'm able to work hard. I drive it to the company, and it's a conversation starter with my car enthusiast colleagues. In the beginning, Lucas complimented the car.
"Wow, that's amazing. Good on you for getting it," he'd say.
But around the time his attitude began to change, he started taking my car without asking. I use my car for commuting and shopping, so it's a problem when it's taken without asking. I might have been more forgiving if Lucas didn't have a car of his own, but he does. Despite that, I dislike that my car is being used without my permission just because he prefers it. Because of this, I have to go out of my way to use the train for commuting, and I have to walk when I go shopping. Of course, I've talked to Lucas about this.
"Hey, can you stop using my car without asking? I need it, too." "What's the big deal?" "It is a big deal for me. I don't care about your issues. You're managing to get to work by train, right? So, it's fine. I have reasons I need to use the car. Don't butt in."
Even though you have your own car?
"Your car is better. Just let it be."
Lucas never listened to me in the end, always cutting off the conversation. The train fares add up, and it's tough to walk from the station to home with a tired body after work. Shopping, which I used to manage once a week, has become more frequent since I can't carry heavy bags without the car, now every other day. I even thought about borrowing Lucas's car. I once asked, with little hope, if I could use it, but he said, "That car is mine. There's no way you can handle it. Don't joke too much, okay?" I thought to myself that one person doesn't need two cars, but I held back my words to avoid another outburst from him. Yet, that doesn't mean I can just use it as I please. Knowing his temperament, he would be furious if the car was parked even slightly off or if the seat and steering wheel were adjusted. That would be a hassle in its own right. If I were younger, I might have argued, but now, I just don't have the energy for it. Lucas continued his pattern of not coming home. He apparently doesn't drink because he drives, but I've noticed him coming home covered in unfamiliar perfume scents. Indeed, his behavior might suggest he's having an affair. I didn't start thinking this just recently, it's been a suspicion for months. I had a faint suspicion ever since Lucas's overtime and nights out began to increase. However, I had no concrete evidence, nor the funds to hire a private investigator. So, I turned a blind eye to Lucas's possible infidelity. Given his condescending attitude toward me, he probably doesn't think I'm aware of his cheating. He must think I'm naive and that I'll just comply with whatever he does, believing he can do anything he wants. The married life I had imagined was far different from this. I dreamed of a warm, kind relationship where we cared for each other, enjoying outings to tourist spots on weekends. I thought I could have that with Lucas, but it was impossible. I'll probably be stuck in this situation for life. With a sigh, I started to make dinner for one. But then one day, something happened that changed everything. It was on a day when I had to work late. I usually inform Lucas when I'm working overtime. I did so that day too, but finished earlier than expected and headed home. No reply from him, as usual. He probably wasn't coming home again today. As I trudged toward my house, I noticed something different. My car was there. Normally, my car would be taken by Lucas, leaving only his car parked alone. It was rare to see mine there. With that thought in mind, I was about to enter the house. But then I saw it. The car was slightly shaking. Perhaps I should have just gone inside the house, but curiosity got the better of me, and I approached the car. I could hear voices from inside. Lucas's voice and a woman's. I edged closer to the car to make sure I could hear the conversation.
Do you love me, Claire?
Yes, I do. The woman's name seemed to be Claire. As I listened, I heard the kind of conversation I had suspected but wished not to hear.
I really want to get a divorce already. I want to marry you, Claire. I'm so happy. How have things been with your wife lately? We don't talk at all. I don't want to. I keep thinking, why did I even marry her? I'm always with you, Claire, so there's no way we could have a proper conversation, right?
That makes sense. I realized I was being mocked. A sharp pain in my chest and an indescribable feeling overcame me. I didn't want to hear any more. I quietly stood up to go inside the house. But at that moment, my bag accidentally hit the car. I knew it was bad, but it was too late. Lucas poked his head out from the driver's seat and looked right at me.
Hey! You! Why are you here?
Well,
Did your wife hear that? Oh, this is the worst.
Lucas got out of the car and started to confront me.
You said you were working late today, right? Why are you back this early? When you say overtime, it's usually much later, isn't it? Did you lie to me? I didn't lie. It really was overtime. But that aside, when I tell you I'm working late, is this what you usually do?
I thought Lucas would falter at my accusation, but having been seen with Claire, it seemed he had nothing left to lose.
Yeah. So what if I am? Is there a problem? Problem? We're married. What you're doing is cheating. And using my car to drive another woman around. So what if I am? I'm driving it now.
Lucas showed no remorse. And then, he said something unbelievable.
This car is mine and Claire's from now on.
I was so dumbfounded, I couldn't respond. My words, even though it's my car, must have prompted his audacious claim. But at that moment, something in me collapsed. If you're willing to take the car, I'm more than happy to hand it over. Of course, the loan comes with it.
All right, but are you sure about the $6,000 loan?
Yes, I have a $6,000 monthly car loan. It was a bit of a stretch, but I figured I could manage it with my current income. It's ridiculous for me to pay for a car loan that Lucas is using.
But you'll have to pay the loan too. What? Why should I? You keep paying it. Why don't you want to pay? Can't you? With your own car and rent, you might not be able to afford it, can you?
My taunting seemed to enrage Lucas even more.
What do you mean I can't pay it? Fine, I'll pay it.
He must be assuming it's an amount I can afford. Later on, I transferred the loan and ownership of the car to Lucas. When the paperwork was being done, he didn't seem shocked at all by the details of the loan. Whether Lucas could actually pay the $6,000 or hadn't read the documents properly. He appeared to be solely focused on finishing the procedures quickly, eager to get them over with. After the transfer was complete, I moved on to the divorce proceedings. This time, due to the infidelity, I hired a lawyer and went for a settlement divorce. I submitted the dashcam footage from the day I discovered the affair to the lawyer and filed for divorce and alimony. The lawyer happily took on my case, and after weeks of preparation, the day to confront Lucas finally arrived. Lucas was visibly angry, and Claire sat beside him with a defiant look. I was told numerous times that hiring a lawyer was excessive, but I didn't think so at all. As we proceeded, I found out how Lucas and Claire met and who she really was. Apparently, Claire is the daughter of an executive at the company where Lucas works. Claire also worked in the same company and department as Lucas, and they were acquainted. Of course, Lucas knew she was the executive's daughter when he pursued her. Lucas was in the wrong for initiating, but Claire was also to blame for engaging with him, knowing he was married. I demanded a divorce and alimony from Lucas, and alimony from Claire. Lucas, perhaps out of stubbornness, exclaimed, "Alimony. Divorce. Do whatever you like. I'll pay whatever alimony you want." However, Claire was adamant about not wanting to pay anything.
Why should I pay? It was Lucas who approached me first. But you knew he was married and still entered into a relationship with Lucas, right? Then you have to pay. Absolutely not. Are you okay with your parents and company finding out about this? I can send a letter of demand, you know? What? A letter of demand? Do whatever you want.
Claire might think I'm bluffing. Well, if she says to do whatever I want, I will take her at her word. I'll send the letter without hesitation. Since Lucas and I both wanted a divorce, it was finalized that day. Lucas agreed to pay alimony, so we proceeded with the dissolution. Of course, as I had declared, I later sent a letter of demand to Claire's company. As expected, she hadn't thought I would really send it, and I was informed by the lawyer that Claire had agreed to pay alimony too. After the divorce, I moved to a house near my company and continued to live a comfortable life. No need to consider anyone else. No need to think about the car loan. What a wonderful life this is. If I hadn't gotten married, could I have continued living like this? I sometimes wonder that and honestly feel a twinge of regret. Maybe because I can afford a more comfortable lifestyle, my colleagues have been telling me I look healthier. I've decided to live quietly on my alimony and my own earnings. I'm not getting married again. From now on, I'll live life for myself. That was my resolution. But about 3 months after the divorce, Lucas unexpectedly called me. What could he possibly want now? Reluctantly, I answered the phone.
Hello? It's not hello. What's going on? What's this red envelope about?
A red envelope? Perhaps a payment reminder?
Calm down. What do you want? What's this red envelope about? When I opened it, it says to pay for the car loan. Wait, you were paying $6,000 a month. I didn't know about this. You didn't know? I presented the amount when we transferred the loan and ownership. It's strange you didn't know. What? You thought you didn't have to check the amount because I was paying it? No way, I thought it'd be $6,000. Hey! Can't we change it back so you'll pay now?
He really is a man of convenience. After all, Lucas would be the one driving even if I paid. Besides, now that we're divorced, I shouldn't have to listen to Lucas.
It's not possible. Remember, you were the one who started saying the car was yours in the first place. Do you really think it's fair to ask me to pay for it now? Don't say that. Weren't we married? Even though we're divorced, we were in love, right? Can't you help me out when I'm in trouble?
In love? Help him out when he's in trouble? What is he talking about? I understand that we were in love because we were married. But I've been through a lot because of Lucas. And now he expects help just because he's in trouble? That's too convenient.
You know, it's far too convenient for you to live as you please and then come to me, a complete stranger since we're divorced, for help when you're in trouble. Now that a demand notice has arrived, you'd better figure out how to come up with the money and make the payment quickly. Figure out how? That's impossible. Don't start with that now. Even if it was in the heat of the moment, you were the one who said you'd pay for my car's loan, remember? Maybe it's time you learned to take responsibility for your own words. So that's that. Hey!
Lucas was causing a fuss on the other end of the phone, but I had nothing left to say to him. Without a second thought about his concerns, I just hung up. Afterwards, the phone rang about 10 times, but there was no way I was going to answer. I left my smartphone aside, and eventually, the ringing stopped and there were no more calls after that. Half a year later, I was still living comfortably on my own. Moving closer to my workplace made commuting blissfully easy. Having more personal time and finding a new hobby of going to art galleries added to my happiness. Then, on a leisurely day off as I relaxed on the sofa, my phone rang. Looking at the caller ID, I saw Lucas's name. Why was he calling again? Hesitantly, I answered the phone to hear him start speaking in a tone that belied his previous bravado. Jessica. It's me. Lucas.
What's wrong?
It may seem like he's in a weakened state, but I can't afford to indulge him. I inquired about the matter with a tone that kept him at a distance. Alimony. I just can't pay it anymore. Please, give me a break.
Excuse me? Give you a break?
His choice of words irked me, but I was curious to hear what had happened. Apparently, he had been putting on a front, but after our divorce, he had to leave his job. The reason was an affair with Claire, a board member's daughter. It appears he was encouraged to resign voluntarily for disrupting the company's order. And now, Claire had dumped him too. He struggled to find a new job, barely getting by with temp work and part-time gigs. However, that kind of life did not last long. Now it seems he has sold both cars, moved out of the rental, and returned to his parents' home. With this, life should become a bit easier for him. But a few weeks after returning home, his mother's health deteriorated, and she needed care. Due to his father's old age, it seems that Shudo has no choice but to take care of his mother while also being chased by the demands of his job. And just because he sold the cars, it didn't mean he was free from car payments. The luxury car loan and the alimony to me. Lucas himself seemed quite overwhelmed.
Please, I'm begging you. Look, if it'll help, I'm even willing to get back together, all right? Wouldn't that make things easier for you too? What do you say? Where would I possibly find ease in that?
Without much thought, it was clear that getting back with Lucas now would mean taking on the burden of his parents' care, the car loan payments, and other living expenses. He'd likely quit his job and leave all the household responsibilities to me. You just want to dump all the housework on me and quit your job, I suppose. Living together was tough enough as it was. No one would willingly jump into an even more difficult situation.
I've said something like this before, but you really only think about yourself, don't you? You're probably thinking of reconciling with me, moving back into the house, and having fun yourself, right? It's not like that. Even if you say it's not like that, I can't believe you. Do you have any idea how much hardship you've caused me? Taking care of your parents might be tough, but getting forced out of your job? Being dumped by your girlfriend? All of that wouldn't have happened if you hadn't cheated, right?
Lucas fell silent. However, I kept pressing him further. I really wonder why I ever married someone like you. If I could meet my younger self, I'd be furious. I'd tell her, no matter what, do not marry Lucas, it won't make you happy. And the fact that you're still talking about getting back together now, it's kind of crazy. If you were really sorry, you wouldn't say things like that. So, just so you know, you'll be paying that alimony on time.
Please, I'm begging you. It must be humiliating to beg someone you once looked down upon, isn't it? No matter how much you plead, I will not listen to your requests. So, do not contact me ever again. Hey! Jessica!
I hung up the phone right after that. Following this, Lucas seemed to have given up, as he stopped contacting me altogether. No more calls, no emails. His desperation was clear in that last call, but the condescension in his tone made me think he still doesn't see his own faults, wondering why such misfortune has befallen him. Well, the alimony has continued to be deposited, so I guess he's managing somehow. Half a year after Lucas's last attempt to reach out, I continue to live my life comfortably on my own. I've continued with my newly found hobby of visiting art museums. As a result, my room is overflowing with art books and postcards purchased from the gift shops. Lately, I've been wanting to visit art museums abroad. There's a lot I think about when it comes to married life, and honestly, even if I were reborn, I doubt I'd want to get married. There's not a single thing about marriage that I think is good. Right now, I'm just grateful for this environment where I can comfortably live on my own. My name is Caroline Johnson. I've been married for 10 years, but my husband, Thomas, and I don't have any children. Thomas believes that as long as a couple is happy together, it doesn't matter if they have kids or not. He's the youngest in his family, and his older brother takes care of their parents. I'm an only child, so I needed to take care of my parents eventually. Thomas agreed, and we decided to build a new house for this purpose. But once the house was finished, Thomas said something unbelievable.
Now that we've moved in, all that's left is for my parents to join us.
I was pleased with how everything was settling in and said so. Just then, the doorbell rang as if someone had been waiting for our move to be complete. When I opened the door, a young woman was standing there. Who might you be? I wondered since we hadn't even introduced ourselves to the neighbors yet. But when Thomas came out from inside, he cheerfully invited her in. What do you think? It's a brand new house.
Wow, large windows and a lawn. And a spacious kitchen. What about the bathroom?
She walked around as if it were her own house, with Thomas showing her around. Thomas was eagerly showing her around. Who is she? I wondered, but couldn't get a moment to ask my husband, who was completely engrossed in attending to her. Maybe she's a relative? I thought as I prepared tea.
Nothing beats a new house. The home gym is amazing. Especially the bathroom, it's so big. I could even watch videos while taking a bath.
It's so spacious, 2 people could easily fit in there.
Well, yeah, it's quite fancy.
What? Fancy? When the 2 of them finally came back to the living room, they snuggled up together on the sofa.
But I don't like the color of the bedspread.
That's easy, we can just replace it with a new one. What are they talking about? The bed doesn't matter. So, we're good then?
Of course. Honey, who's this person?
She's my lover.
What, a lover?
Shocked by his unexpected words, I desperately tried to think that he must mean something other than a lover. But I couldn't think of any other possibility. Wow, the old lady looks surprised. Thomas, didn't you tell her anything? No, I haven't said anything yet. That's not good. You should have told her. Don't worry, I'm gonna tell her now. What is he going to say? Who is this woman claiming to be a lover? You might not have known, but Margaret here is my girlfriend. Now he says she's his girlfriend. My husband, Thomas, is 38, and this woman in front of me is clearly in her late 20s. Yet, he's calling her his lover, then his girlfriend. I can't make sense of what he's saying. You still don't get it? You're so clueless.
Does this mean you've been cheating?
It's not cheating. Is he going to say it's serious? It is serious. Ah, just as I thought. This feels like a line from some TV shows I've seen. The whole "it's not cheating, it's serious" thing.
So, this is betrayal, right?
Yeah, you could see it that way. But it can't be helped. I love Margaret more than you. Such blatant defiance. So, I'm gonna leave you. A 38-year-old man bringing home such a young woman and suddenly talking about divorce. And this, just after we've built a new house, with a mortgage looming ahead.
What about this house? It's brand new, you know? And we've got a mortgage to pay off.
You don't need to worry about the mortgage. After all, the house is in your name, so you're the one who'll be paying it.
What?
Yes, the house is in my name. When we were discussing the ownership, my husband said, I'll be covering the living expenses so you can handle the mortgage. In return, let's put it in your name. Who knows, I might pass away first. If it's in my name, there'll be all that fuss about inheritance tax, right? That made sense to me, so I agreed to his proposal. So, Margaret and I will live here, right?
Right.
What do they mean by right?
This house was built to live with my parents.
I never planned to live with your parents. You were just dreaming that up on your own.
How could you?
I planned to live here with Maggie from the start. Just as originally intended.
How is this originally intended?
I wanted to say so much, but my mind went blank and I couldn't think of what to say. Even if I wanted to argue, I couldn't find the words. So, Margaret and I will live here. You should leave. Here, I've prepared the divorce paper. My husband said this mockingly as he handed me the divorce forms. Meanwhile, Margaret was looking at her nails. They were long, neatly manicured. Can he really live with a woman who keeps her nails like that? Hurry up and take it. Once you've taken, pack your stuff and leave. And, take the divorce papers to the court, will you? We're planning to get married soon. The woman said, smiling triumphantly. Feeling rushed, I took the divorce papers and went to the bedroom to pack my things. I was supposed to sleep in this bed tonight, but now it will be my husband and that woman. I felt nauseous.
Hey, how much longer are you going to take? Margaret is telling you to hurry up. Just get out already.
I couldn't say anything back, barely managing a nod. Leaving the house, I went to the court to submit the divorce papers. Then, I headed to my parents' house, but tears blurred my vision. Arriving home, my mom greeted me, shocked to see me crying.
What happened?
Mom. I hadn't cried this loudly in years. Tears flooded out as if releasing all the pent-up emotions. Just come inside. Once inside, she patiently waited for me to stop crying. It must have been an hour before I could finally speak. Then, I started talking non-stop, like a dam had burst. What just happened? The betrayal by my husband. His young lover. My mother was undoubtedly shocked after hearing it all. When did it start? When? I wonder. Thinking about it, there had been signs that something was off about a year ago. But I had convinced myself that my husband couldn't possibly be cheating. Or maybe it was just easier to think that way and stop suspecting him. I see. Well, I understand how you feel. So, what are you going to do now? What to do? Are you just going to accept the divorce and step back, letting them do as they please, or are you going to fight back? Fight back? I don't even know what I could do. Yeah, that's tough. After a moment of thought, my mother said, if you decide to fight back, I'll help you. Several weeks later, with advice from my mother, I returned to the new house. What do you want? Came back to pick up something you forgot? Really, old lady, showing up without calling? That's so not cool. We're busy, you know.
Quiet, you brat.
That's mean. Hey, Tommy, are you going to let her talk to me like that? I'm being bullied by this old lady here. Poor Maggie, it's unacceptable for me to bully you for sure. It's nice that you two are so lovey-dovey, but I've come to talk. Can't you let me in? Why not just talk here at the door?
This is my house.
You're a stranger now. This can't possibly be your house anymore. Right, that's the important point. I'm a stranger to this man. Too bad. The rights to this place are mine. Now, move aside. I pushed past them and headed to the living room. But it was no longer the living room I had loved, it was filled with the woman's tastes. Such childish taste.
Better than being old-fashioned. What's this all about? Spit it out already.
I sat down on the sofa, smiled mockingly at them, and said, "Get out."
What? Get out? Are you kidding me? You're the one who should be leaving.
No, it's you who should leave. The owner of this house is me. Now that we're divorced, I, as the owner, have the rights. If you don't leave, I'll sue you.
Sue us?
That's right.
How can you even sue? That's impossible. Have you lost your mind after the divorce?
My mind is perfectly fine. Like I said earlier, we're strangers now that we're divorced. And I'm the owner of this house. You staying here without my consent is trespassing. If you don't want to be sued, you better pack your things and leave quickly.
Don't be ridiculous. You didn't say anything like that when we divorced.
Of course not. How could I remain calm when you suddenly brought your lover home? In such a situation, who would think about the law? That's impossible. What? I'm saying you can't do it. Oh, and why is that? With your personality, I can't see you doing something like that. I've known you all this time. You couldn't do anything without me. And now suddenly, you're capable of such a big move? You're just trying to threaten me. You're underestimating me. Happy now? Who's underestimating whom? If you keep this up, you're going to get hurt, you know? Ah, do your worst. Fine, you asked for it. I came here to warn you kindly, but you're just foolish. So, if that's what you want, I'll proceed. Enjoy cooling your head in jail. I said this, stood up and headed towards the door. I got into my car and immediately called my lawyer. A few days later, Thomas called me in a panic.
Hey! I got a letter from the lawyer.
Oh, really?
You actually sued us?
I haven't sued you yet. But I wouldn't say such things blindly. Before going to the police, I consulted a lawyer.
So, we're going to get arrested?
That's right. If you don't leave, I'll go to the police. You might be detained for up to 72 hours. If that happens, your employer will find out, and you might even get fired.
Why would you do something like that? I haven't done it yet. Please stop.
If you want me to stop, then leave that place.
No, I can't. Margaret wouldn't like it.
I don't care what your dear Maggie thinks. That house is mine.
What am I supposed to do? How can I stay in this house?
I can agree to a settlement.
A settlement?
Yes. The settlement amount is $20,000.
$20,000?
It's a cheap price to stay here.
So if I pay $20,000, can I really stay here?
Yes, you can.
And you won't go to the police?
I won't. But if you want to stay, you need to pay the mortgage on this house. Think of it as rent.
Rent.
Then, I heard some talking in the background over the phone. Listening closely, it sounded like Margaret was saying something.
Hey, if we get arrested, will we really go to jail?
You'll be detained for questioning. Then it might go to trial, and you could either get a real sentence or a fine.
A fine? What's that?
Look it up. There's plenty of info online.
If you know, just tell me.
Scared much? A fine means you settle it with money.
How much?
Who knows? It says up to $2,000.
Then isn't it better to just go to trial?
If you think so, go ahead. But remember, you'll have a criminal record, and you'll definitely lose your job. Plus, finding a new job will be tough.
Ah.
If it were just about money, wouldn't everyone choose a trial? But there's a big social risk involved.
So, that's how it is.
So, accepting a settlement is the best option, isn't it? And if you want to live in that house, you'll have to pay rent.
How much is the rent?
The full amount of the mortgage.
Once I finish paying that, will the house be mine?
Of course not. The house is in my name. I pay the taxes on it, so it's mine, no matter how you look at it.
That's not right, Margaret says.
I don't care how wrong she thinks it is. Your dear Maggie doesn't understand the societal aspects, does she? How the world works.
Ah. She's young.
If you understand it's because of her youth, then as the older one, you should teach her. Not that you could.
Your words are harsh.
Well, yes. We're strangers now, so I don't need to consider your feelings. I used to choose my words not to upset you, but I don't need to do that anymore.
I see. Hey, give me the title to the house.
The title?
Yeah. Margaret wants to own this house. And we didn't divide any property when we divorced. I should at least get the house, right?
Do you think we had property to divide? We both contributed to the living expenses from our earnings, right? So, there's no joint savings. In fact, all the household items and appliances, I mostly paid for them. Technically, I could take all of it. Oh, and the furniture we bought when we renovated, I paid for that too.
That's ridiculous.
See? Pretending to know about property division will only hurt you.
So, okay, not property division. Just give me the house.
Are you okay in the head? I can't believe you're asking for that.
I have no choice. Margaret insists she wants the house in her name.
You're just a puppet. So naive.
Please.
All right then, you just need to pay the down payment of $20,000.
Down payment?
Yes, that much for the title to become yours. It's a pretty good deal, I think.
Yeah, I guess so. All right, I'll pay $20,000.
Then, with the settlement and the down payment, that makes $40,000 in total. Plus, you'll cover the costs for the title transfer.
What? What's that?
It's a gift, so there'll be a gift tax. Tough, isn't it?
You've got to be kidding.
This is real, quite a shock, isn't it?
All right. I'll do it for Maggie.
Sure, Maggie this, Maggie that. Please make sure the payment is in one lump sum, Maggie. So, I received a total of $40,000 in cash, comprising the settlement of $20,000 and a down payment of another $20,000. But I wasn't planning to let it end there. Considering the humiliation and pain I had endured, I wouldn't be satisfied until he hit rock bottom. A month later, I heard Thomas's panicked voice again.
Hey, Caroline.
What's this about? Hello there. But you know, you and I are strangers now. Please don't address me so informally.
Got it.
What is this about? Well, you're saying this over the phone. That's funny.
A lawyer's demanding spousal support from me.
Oh, that's a pretty standard claim. How is it standard?
We're already divorced, and the papers have been processed.
True. But the cause of the divorce is on you. You brought your lover into our home, and when asked about cheating, you openly admitted it was serious. It's absurd to think you wouldn't be sued and asked for spousal support.
But you didn't mention this when we divorced.
Well, back then, my mind was blank. I didn't think of it. Now that I'm calm, I see I have quite an advantage.
But why now? It's been a month since we divorced. Isn't that something you claim right away? Or discuss it at the time?
Listen, there's no period for claiming spousal support. It can be claimed any time unless the divorce judgment changes. Oh, divorce teaches you so much.
Hey, I've already paid $40,000 for the settlement and down payment for the house. And now spousal support on top of that.
That $20,000 was to keep you and Maggie out of jail. And the other $20,000 was the down payment because you wanted the house, right? Neither of those has no business with it.
I know, but this is just impossible.
Guess what? I have some exciting news.
What? The only good news would be you dropping the spousal support claim.
Not happening. But here's a new fact I discovered after we split. Listen up. I'm pregnant with your child.
What? No way.
True. With all this happening, I felt sick. I thought it was a stomach ulcer or something, so I went to the gastroenterologist. They told me to visit the gynecologist, and guess what? I'm 3 months pregnant.
Yay! We couldn't have kids for so long.
Maybe feeling safe about not being able to conceive was what did it.
Now, of all times.
So, expect a claim for child support too.
Child support, even though we're divorced?
You can take a DNA test if you wish. However, it just adds to the cost. It's obvious you're the dad. Please pay the child support.
No way. You're planning to have the baby at your age?
Of course. It's my long-awaited child. There's no question of not having it.
This is crazy. We were okay with the mortgage because we couldn't have kids.
No, you thought it was okay because you planned to make me pay it.
Well, maybe I did think that.
I'm not saying you have to pay every month.
What do you mean?
If you paid every month, Maggie wouldn't like it, right? It'd reduce the money for her, even though it's not her child. So, spousal support and child support, I'd prefer it all in one lump sum.
You can't be serious.
I am. I don't lie like you do.
That's impossible.
Well then, do you want to pay monthly? I'm sure Maggie would be furious. Can you handle that?
No way.
Right. So, it's better to pay it all at once. Even if it means getting a loan. You can always make up some story about why you need the loan. You're good at lying. After all, you cheated on me without me knowing.
You!
So, the spousal support is $60,000, and child support for 20 years at $600 per month comes to $144,000. Oh, the total is $204,000, lucky me.
You've got to be kidding. How am I supposed to pay that?
If you can't pay, I'll have to ask my lawyer to take legal action. Keep that in mind.
I'll have to borrow from a consumer loan service.
Why not ask Maggie to work? Having run out of savings, my husband borrowed from a loan service and paid everything in a lump sum. I never thought he'd actually borrow from a consumer loan service, but his going into the negative was lucky for me. The timing of the pregnancy was surprising, but I think the baby was cheering me on. Now, Thomas is struggling with the mortgage payments. He probably thought he could manage with his savings for a while. I can't pay because I have no money doesn't cut it. So, Thomas's solution was to plead, Maggie, I'm sorry. Could you please work? But Margaret was having none of it.
What? Are you joking? Why should I work? Tommy, you said I could be a stay-at-home wife when we got married.
I know, but I can't pay the mortgage. We both have to work now.
No way. Why suddenly change? You said we were fine because of your savings.
Well, there's a bit of a situation with that.
I don't care. I absolutely refuse to work.
No matter how much he tried to reason with her, Margaret refused to work, not doing anything around the house or even cooking properly. She spent her days playing games or hanging out with friends. This can't go on. I have no choice but to sell the house. Thomas decided to sell and went to a real estate agency run by my friend. This friend, though mutual, was closer to me.
What? It's a new house. Why are you selling it?
Well, it's because. After hearing the situation, my friend came to me with the story. Everything was in Thomas's favor. Not mentioning anything about his mistress. So, I told my friend everything. That happened. So, can you sell the house? It's tough. It's new but considered second-hand now. Plus, he wants to sell it high. And it's far from the station. But I'll give it a try. However, it didn't sell, and the price kept dropping. He complained that it's down a lot, half of what it cost to build it. Really? It dropped that much? Then I'll buy it. The house, new but now second-hand, was going for cheap, but I wanted it even cheaper.
Really?
Yeah, but I don't want to buy at the current price. If you can drop it by another $100,000, I'll buy it. Just don't tell Thomas it's me buying.
All right, got it.
Then, my friend approached Thomas saying, there's someone interested in buying, but they're asking if the price can be lowered even more. If you drop it by another $100,000, they'll buy it.
That much?
Yes, that's the offer. But think about it, if you keep holding on to the house without selling, the mortgage will just keep piling up, right? It's better to sell, isn't it? Skillfully steering the conversation, my friend managed to get Thomas to agree to lower the price by another $100,000, selling it to me for less than half its original value. However, Margaret, who hadn't been informed about the sale, was furious.
Why are you selling the house behind my back? What do you mean we have to move out by the end of the month? This is not a joke. You're so worthless.
I'm sorry, Maggie. But I had no choice. If we continue like this, we won't be able to pay the mortgage and we'll lose the house anyway. All that will be left is debt.
That's not my problem. You said I could live in a new house when we got married. This is like a fraud.
I'm sorry, please forgive me.
There's no way I'm forgiving you. I can't live with a loser like you. I'll divorce you right away.
Furious, Margaret left Thomas after he begged for forgiveness. Thomas then used the money from the house sale to repay his consumer loan. However, the mortgage remained. He tried to stay positive, telling himself, all I have to do now is pay the monthly mortgage. And he continued to pay the mortgage, which had been reduced by about half. But then, further disaster struck. It was the damage bill I sent to Margaret for her annoying harassment before the divorce. Thinking it unfair for Thomas to suffer alone, I sent Margaret a bill for ruining my marriage. Margaret, however, tried to make Thomas pay for it. Why am I getting this bill? It's not my fault. You're the one to blame. You should pay for it, Margaret said. Frustrated, Thomas came complaining to me.
Why are you sending Margaret a damage bill?
I could sense his plea for mercy.
You know, she was part of breaking up a family, right? It's only what she deserves. But it's all coming down on me.
Just refuse to pay if you don't like it, I said, but Thomas, being bombarded with complaints by Margaret, made a promise he couldn't keep to pay it himself. In the end, he borrowed from a consumer loan service again to pay the bill in full. This led him into an even more difficult situation, as the interest on the loans compounded. He worked his day job and cleaned buildings at night, but it didn't bring in much money. Desperate, he even tried medical trial jobs, which left him physically exhausted and struggling through hard days. As for me, I was living comfortably in the new house with my parents and newborn child, enjoying a very affluent lifestyle thanks to the reduced price of the house, the child support and spousal support, and the down payment from Thomas. It's indeed a happy life for me. Hey, long time no see. You've really aged, haven't you? We're divorced, remember? Try to be a bit more considerate with your words. I thought as ex-spouses, we could speak freely. So, what have you been up to since our divorce? You know, I got married right after our split. And guess what? My wife was pregnant right away. If you're not infertile, it's easy to have kids. Now, I live happily with my wife and son. Good for you. I'm glad you're happy. What about you? Oh, sorry, I forgot. Being infertile means you're probably still single, right? Past 30 and unable to have kids, you must be pretty undesirable. I got divorced 15 years ago because of infertility. At a reunion, I met my ex-husband who bragged about his family to put me down. But he's making a big mistake. Huh? Who is? I'm about to correct his misunderstanding. He'll surely regret his words. Also, I'll throw in an extra piece of news. With a bit of mischief, I decided to share something unnecessary. That revelation would push him over the edge. I'm Rachel. I am a 28-year-old working at a consulting firm. I'm about to get married and will soon meet our parents. My fiancé, Ben, also 28, is a salesperson at a major manufacturer. We've been childhood friends since kindergarten. After high school, we went to different colleges, and after graduating, we got jobs and left their hometown. A few years after getting a job, we found out through social media that my workplace was nearby, and we met up for the first time in a long time since graduating. We moved away from my hometown and met childhood friends as adults. We started dating in a storybook romance and are now getting married. Are you sure it'll be okay? What if your father doesn't like me?
Don't worry about it.
But your father is a CEO. I used to talk to him casually as a kid, but now I'm nervous. My fiancé kept adjusting his straight tie, wiping the sweat from his forehead. Even I, who was watching, was nervous. Indeed, my dad owns a metalworking company in a small town. But it's not as grand as it used to be. Dad's not a stern figure. Take my daughter if you like, but no returns. His joke eased my fiancé's nerves in no time. I wouldn't return her even if you asked me to. Eventually, my fiancé even cracked a joke. My mom and I exchanged looks, relieved that the meeting went well. But later, my fiancé seemed concerned.
The factory and company. Are they doing okay? They're not as good as before. It's just how times change. Can't you, as a consultant, help out? Turning around a company is hard. I can't just do it part-time. If I were to help, I'd have to quit my job and join his company. So, you're planning to take over the business? No. Dad doesn't want me to struggle with it. He plans to sell it eventually. I just give simple advice to keep it running until he retires. Got it.
Realizing the company was fine, my fiancé's face softened. I was touched by his concern for my dad. 6 months later, we got married.
Do you want coffee, or will your usual tea do?
Yes, tea please. While I was cleaning up after dinner, my husband prepared my tea perfectly. Also, to prevent the tea from getting cold, the tea is brewed just in time for when the dishes are finished. His thoughtfulness, typical of a salesperson, always anticipates my needs. Our marriage is going smoothly. However, 2 years in, I began to feel a certain unease about our otherwise perfect life. My relationship with my husband is good, and we're intimate fairly often. However, it's been 2 years since we got married, and we still haven't been blessed with a child.
Don't worry so much, it'll happen eventually.
But I'm already 30. I can't help feeling a bit anxious. My husband, lounging on the living room sofa and fiddling with his smartphone, responds casually to my concerns. Normally, I would be upset that he's not taking this more seriously. However, I know he's trying to prevent me from feeling too anxious or guilty about not being able to have children. He's an only child, just like me, and his parents both worked. He often spent time alone at home and has always longed for a complete family life. My parents also worked, but I spent time at their office after school, so I never felt the loneliness he did. Still, I understand the importance of spending time with loved ones and want to make his wish come true. I also want children.
I think I'll go to the doctor just to be sure.
Is that really necessary?
If nothing's wrong, that's great. But if there's an issue, it's better to know, right? Well, yeah, I suppose.
The following weekend, I went to the hospital alone for 2 reasons. 1, I assumed they'd probably just tell me nothing was wrong. 2, if there was a problem, I didn't want to worry about how to react in front of my husband. I casually went to the hospital, thinking about what to buy on the way home. The tests were over quickly, but I had to wait for the results. 2 weeks later, the results were in. It's like nature's rule to expect the worst in these situations. I didn't shop that day, just walked home staring at the ground. I'm infertile. Well, I told my husband about the diagnosis that evening, hoping to ease the tension by doing it during dinner. The mood in the house became heavy, and both of us stopped eating. But it wasn't all hopeless, there was some chance. The doctor said my infertility can be treated with about a 30% success rate. After 30, the chances decrease. I just made it in time.
30%, huh? And it only goes down from here.
While I started eating again, my husband remained silent. We seem to have different feelings about the 30% chance. When I first heard I was infertile, I was desperate. But hearing there was a 30% chance felt like a significant number to me. For my husband, though, it didn't seem like a high chance. Seeing his disappointed face made me stop eating again. Since then, our previously smooth marriage has become somewhat awkward.
Will you be home late tomorrow too?
Yeah. While cleaning up the dishes, I talk to my husband relaxing in the living room, but he responds disinterestedly. Ever since he found out about my infertility, he's been coming home late. He says he's busy with work, but I think he wants to spend less time at home. On weekends, he leaves early and returns late at night. He no longer sleeps in our bedroom but on the living room sofa. We're together in the house but living separate lives. I feel sad as I sense his heart drifting away. But knowing the reason is because of me, I can't blame him. 6 months later, my marriage had cooled significantly, and my husband and I hardly spoke at home anymore. Today, being a day off, he left the house early in the morning. Watching him put on his shoes at the entrance, I realized I felt somewhat relieved when he left. My mood lightened slightly, and I became more efficient with chores like laundry. However, as I was about to throw one of his shirts into the washing machine, I sighed. Foundation stains again. These never come out. I wasn't surprised to see the foundation on his shirt. It has been happening occasionally for the past 2 or 3 months. Since our relationship was already strained, I had no intention of making a fuss about a possible affair. I spread out the stained shirt and resigned myself to the fact that our marriage was probably nearing its end. It seemed he felt the same way. Given that he didn't bother to hide these foundation-stained shirts in the laundry basket. That night, I brought up the topic of divorce. Should we call it quits? If we divorce, you can be with your new woman, right? You knew? Drop the act. Can we just end this smoothly? Okay. I have a job and don't need his money. He works at a major manufacturer. It wouldn't hurt him much in terms of finance. I'd rather have a smooth separation than a messy divorce. He seemed to have anticipated my proposal and accepted the divorce without a flinch. However, I wanted to know a little about his affair. It was just my curiosity. What's she like? She's 2 years younger. We met through our shared hobby of fishing. So, that's what you've been doing on your days off. Brave of her to date a married man. You didn't hide your marital status, did you? I was honest. Told her I was planning to divorce and we're dating with the intention of remarrying. I'm ready to divorce, just waiting on her end now. Waiting? Don't tell me it's a double affair? No, she's just my girlfriend. I've successfully stolen someone's heart. I had many things I wanted to say. But I held back to avoid complicating the divorce. We finalized the divorce without issue. My ex-husband quickly moved on with his new partner, who apparently had also ended her previous relationship. They were planning to marry. I thought I was prepared for the divorce, but it hit me harder than expected. I stayed in our house for a while, continuing with my job, but eventually decided to quit and return to my parents' home. 15 years after returning home, I've completely healed from the divorce. It's now just a distant memory. Just then, I received a notice for a middle school reunion. My ex-husband, who was a childhood friend, might also attend. During the divorce, I prioritized a smooth separation and didn't express all my feelings. Although I didn't make a fuss about his infidelity, I wasn't unbothered by it. After 15 years, I decided to attend the reunion, planning a small act of revenge. However, my minor mischief would greatly disrupt his life. At the reunion, I saw many familiar faces. I was enjoying catching up with old friends, when I noticed a long-forgotten face approaching. Hey, long time no see. You've really aged, haven't you? My ex-husband greeted me with a mocking laugh. If I'm old, so is he. I was enjoying the conversation until he approached with a villainous smile, making our friends awkwardly distance themselves from us. We're divorced, remember? Be a little more considerate with your words. I figured as ex-spouses, we could speak freely. How have you been since our divorce?
As for me, I got remarried right after our split. Right after the wedding, my wife got pregnant. Turns out, she was already pregnant when you and I divorced. If you're not infertile, it's easy to have kids. Now, I live happily with my wife and son.
Good for you, I'm glad you're happy. And what about you? Oh, sorry.
Being infertile, you're probably still alone, right? Past 30 and unable to have kids, you must be pretty undesirable to everyone, huh?
Huh? Who is? My ex-husband shows me photos on his phone of his family outings and brags about his new wife and son, trying to one-up me with his happiness. I find his talk uninteresting and listen with an expressionless face. He seems to have a lot of misunderstandings. Just correcting those will surely make him regret his words. As I'm thinking about how to set him straight, a girl approaches me at just the right moment.
Mommy, I made a new friend.
That's great, sweetie. Mommy's talking to a friend right now. Can you go play with your new friend a little longer?
Okay.
She obediently runs off, full of energy. Hey, who was that kid? What? That's my daughter.
Didn't they say it was okay to bring kids today?
Look, there are other kids around.
That's not what I mean.
Did she just call you mom? Yes, that's my daughter Sophia. She's 10 years old this year.
But weren't you infertile? How do you have a child?
Oh, I get it.
It's a stepchild. Is it the child of a remarried partner?
Excuse me. Sophia is the child I gave birth to.
How?
Infertility can be treated, you know? You just assumed it couldn't be cured. I hear soft chuckles from around us. My close friends know about my divorce and that I have a child. So, my ex-husband, who thought I couldn't have kids and tried to one-up me with his own, ended up being laughed at by our friends. He seems to realize he's the butt of the joke.
So, you have a child, which means you got married again.
Congratulations. My ex-husband, embarrassed about trying and failing to one-up me with his child, turns red. Though he congratulates me, it seems more like an attempt to hide his embarrassment and appear magnanimous.
Who'd marry an old hag like you?
Workplace romance.
Really? Still working at the consulting firm?
No, you're out of the loop.
I took over my dad's business. He's not retired yet, but he's working as the chairman now. What? I thought you said that company was going to be sold. I decided to take over the business when I moved back home after our divorce. It's been a tough 15 years, but now we're approaching a revenue of $60 million a year. We've moved up from a small to a medium-sized company. $60 million?
My success in growing my father's company is fairly well known among local friends. My ex-husband, clueless about this, is once again the subject of chuckles from our friends.
Didn't you say running a company wasn't easy?
Yes,
but after the divorce and quitting my job, I could fully focus on turning the company around.
Growing the business was a continuous struggle. At first, employees were skeptical about me suddenly taking over. So, the first step is to actively communicate with employees and gain their trust. I spent the first 2 years building trust through communication and proved my worth through my work. It took another 3 years. During this time, I overworked myself to exhaustion, but my current husband supported me. He stood by me during my infertility treatments, and we had Sophia 10 years ago. For the past decade, we've been tirelessly growing the business, breaking through the $10 million revenue barrier faced by many companies, and now we're reaching $60 million.
You're the president of a $60 million company?
Yes.
You let go of me, thinking I was infertile and unable to be successful. But I had a child and grew a business. How does that make you feel? And how about you? Have you made it to the sales director yet?
I ask him with a smirk, not knowing his actual position at his company. Considering he works for a major manufacturer with many rivals, I'm sure it's not easy. Seeing him clench his teeth in silence, I'm convinced he hasn't achieved significant success. I counter his child's one-upmanship and surpass him in career success. Watching his frustrated face satisfies me, but I decide to drop one more bombshell.
By the way, you said your wife got pregnant right after you married. That was right after our divorce, but also soon after she broke up with her boyfriend, right? Are you really sure that it's my child? Is that what you're trying to say? Of course, it's my child. Claiming that doesn't make it more convincing. You were having an affair, and so was she, right?
The topics of affairs, the possibility that my ex-husband's child might belong to someone else, drew the attention of those around us. Not just our close friends, but many people gathered around us. It was a bit embarrassing to be the center of attention, but clearly, my ex-husband was the villain in this scene. The cold stares were all directed at him. He seemed to realize the chilly reception and quickly left the venue. Satisfied with making my ex-husband face embarrassment, I resumed chatting with my friends. My revenge on my ex-husband was complete. I thought I wouldn't think about him anymore. But about a month after the reunion, he called me. He probably got my number from a friend at the reunion. Reluctantly answering the phone, I wondered what he would say.
Hey! Did you know about this?
I racked my brain for what he could be referring to, but couldn't come up with anything. So, I directly asked him.
What are you talking about all of a sudden? It's about my child. Just like you said, it turns out he's not really my child.
What's that about? I couldn't help but burst into laughter, even though I knew I shouldn't. My ex-husband had taken my words seriously and got a DNA test, which revealed that the child he thought was his wasn't biologically related to him.
How did you know that? And why didn't you tell me?
I didn't know.
I just said that to make you anxious or maybe cause a little fight with your wife. I never thought it would actually be true.
Was she cuckolding you?
No, my wife didn't know either. She thought it was my child. It's your own fault for not checking, even though she had a boyfriend right up until she got pregnant with you. But you've been raising that child for 15 years, blood-related or not, he's still your child, right?
What?
Why would he be my child? He's the child of my wife's ex-boyfriend. I've decided to divorce.
What? Just like when discussing divorce, there are many things I want to say to my ex-husband. However, people have different values, and I don't think I should interfere in other people's family affairs. I swallowed the words that rose to my throat.
Then you're getting a divorce, right? I'm in trouble because I can't do that.
Why?
My wife says she won't divorce me.
When it was discovered that the child was not his, my ex-husband asked his new partner for a divorce. At that time, it seems that his wife put the divorce on hold and first sought out and contacted her boyfriend from 15 years ago. Perhaps after the divorce, she was checking to see if she could rely on her ex-boyfriend. However, when she told her ex-boyfriend about her child, he apparently lost contact with her, quit his job, and disappeared. When your ex-girlfriend contacts you for the first time in 15 years and tells you that she has your child, I can understand why he wants to run away. It seems that she can no longer rely on her ex-boyfriend and is refusing to divorce because she doesn't want to be abandoned.
Your wife gave birth to someone else's child, right? Can't that be grounds for divorce? That's where it gets complicated. Just because the child was born before the divorce doesn't mean it was an affair. My wife and I thought it was our child.
Apparently, the relationship between my ex-husband and new partner is much more complicated than I imagined. He explained it to me in detail, but I couldn't understand it because it involved the law. There were some parts that I could understand. First, because she and my ex-husband believed their children, legally speaking, my ex-husband is the father. For my ex-husband to push through with the divorce, it seems necessary to go through a complicated process. There seems to be a case in the past where the court has ruled that parentage cannot be denied based on the results of a DNA test, so this seems to be quite difficult. It would be entirely the fault of my ex-husband and his wife, as they both believed the child was their own and neither of them investigated the child's father. Since she did not intentionally deceive my ex-husband, there is a high possibility that a divorce may not be granted even if the child is the reason. In other words, his wife refuses to divorce my ex-husband because she can't rely on anyone because her child's real father has run away. My ex-husband wants a divorce, but he may not accept the fact that he is not the father of the child as a reason for divorce. That seems to be the case.
The point is, you can't get a divorce even if you wanted to, right? That's the thing. What should I do now? Do I have to keep raising other people's children like this?
When I heard my ex-husband's words, I let out a sigh.
You say it's someone else's child, but isn't it yours already? Huh? Why does it have to be my child? It's my wife's ex-boyfriend's child.
I spoke firmly, thinking a little argument wouldn't hurt, but it seems my words didn't affect my ex-husband at all. It was a waste of time trying to argue with him.
I have nothing more to say to you. You chose to divorce me thinking my infertility was incurable. You snatched your second wife away from her boyfriend, and you didn't bother to confirm the paternity of the child. All those decisions were yours. Take responsibility for them.
I yelled at him and hung up the phone. How pathetic my ex-husband is, whining to his ex-wife he divorced 15 years ago. When I got home from work that day, my husband and daughter were happily watching TV in the living room. Watching them from behind, I realized how glad I was to have divorced my ex-husband. Apparently, he couldn't get a divorce yet. Obviously, he has to pay for the child's living expenses and child support. The child is 15, so even if he divorces in 3 years, the child will already be an adult. His second wife will probably not make a fuss about divorce at that point. It's a clear win for her. She hasn't told the child about his real father yet. So, the child resents his father for abruptly leaving. When he learns the truth, he might be relieved he's not really my ex-husband's child. But it could also increase his hatred for my ex-husband. When that time comes, I hope my ex-husband faces the child's anger without running away. By then, he'll have experienced his second divorce and likely won't want to marry again. My ex-husband tried to one-up me, thinking I couldn't have children, but I got the upper hand with my child and career. My little comment threw his life into chaos. Maybe he shouldn't have tried to one-up me. I continue to work hard. And unlike my ex-husband, our family relations are great. We're currently planning where to go on our next